A South African court is deciding this Tuesday if thousands of Zimbabweans can stay back in the country or face possible deportation. Thousands of Zimbabweans are living in South Africa under the Zimbabwe Exemption Permit program are facing possible deportation due to the South African Home Office's decision to end the program on June 30th. The case is being argued before the South African courts to keep the program and up to 180,000 immigrants at risk of being sent back to Zimbabwe if the court upholds the government's decision to end the program. Arise analyst Mxolisi Masango joins us now to discuss the undercurrents that led to the scrapping of the Zimbabwe exemption permit that puts these 180,000 migrants at risk of being sent back to Zimbabwe. Welcome to Newsday, Mxolisi. So let's go straight into it. Where are we at now? We're looking at a deadline of June 30th, just a few more weeks until this particular order goes through, seeing the 180,000 possible immigrants, Zimbabweans rather, going back to their country. So where are we at now? Give us a current overview of what's going on.
So essentially, the termination of the Zimbabwean exemption permit is at the heart of a legal battle at the Pretoria High Court today as we speak. I mean, we continue to hear arguments from the Helen Suzman Foundation, which is challenging government right now, saying that the termination of the ZEP, without proper consultation is unlawful and unjust, and that would basically and essentially see so many families torn apart, which would mean that these Zimbabweans would have to be deported. Now, it was first introduced 10 years ago and was extended twice since then. And then after that, Home Affairs Minister Aaron Mxolisi said it now expires in June and hence would not be extended again. I mean, listen, just having some conversations, with some Zimbabweans who are actually affected by this, it's a catch-22 situation for them, especially seeing how they themselves have been, trying to go from pillar to post to try and have their permits renewed. I mean, I had a conversation with one school principal who said that she is now in a position where she's almost destitute because she's chasing this deadline essentially. And on the other hand, she's unable to get any help from Home Affairs in South Africa because the skill of a principal here in South Africa is not deemed as a critical skill. Hence, they cannot really grant her a permit to stay in the country. So this in essence now would mean about 178 Zimbabwean migrants in SA will be affected come this deadline in June. So right now, as we're having this conversation, the court case is still currently underway at the High Court in Pretoria, with arguments being heard both from the side of the state, which is government, as well as the Helen Suzman Foundation, which is representing most of the interests of the Zimbabweans right now.
It's quite unfortunate, and we do know that migration is a very touchy subject internationally and particularly in South Africa. I mean, there's 35% power cuts. There's a huge high unemployment. The question is now, what is to become of these individuals who are due to be deported under the ZEP? Some are saying that they fear returning back to Zimbabwe due to the fact that they supported the opposition and fear retribution. Do you know any more about that?
Absolutely. Like I was also just mentioned at the top of my conversation that, having a conversation with one school principal who's now been based in South Africa for most of her life, she essentially said something that resonates with me right now, where she said that essentially, where do you go back to start at the beginning when all you know of what home is South Africa? So essentially says that if she were to go back home, she essentially would not know where to start. She'd be lost. And that is essentially the sentiment that is shared by most of these Zimbabweans, of about 178,000 that would be affected by June. Most of them coming out to say that all they know of what home is South Africa, and where do they begin to pick up the pieces should and if they be sent home back in June. So right now, and also with those arguments that we've been hearing from the Helen Suzman Foundation, what they have been saying is that many families will be hardest hit. You have people who've already started and built families here in South Africa. And if you have kids as well, now you are also asking kids to also uproot their lives, which is essentially a domino effect, which is also going to be playing to the broken African family model, which is what we've been hearing throughout the course of the arguments that were being made by the Helen Suzman Foundation throughout the court proceedings. So right now, since it's 4 p.m. Central African time right now, what we've been told is that it might also be resuming tomorrow, because we continue to be hearing arguments now from the representatives of the Helen Suzman Foundation, who've essentially said that government is really not playing fair by deporting these Zimbabwean immigrants by June.
Okay, so we know that the advocate Stephen Bodlender for the foundation said that the termination of the ZEP program stood to upend the lives of people who had been in the country legally for several years. He further argued that if ZEP, these people were not given the chance to make any meaningful representations before the decision itself, making it unlawful. So is there a legal standpoint to see if the fact that they were not, at first spoken to before the decision was taken could make them change their minds?
Well, that would be, of course, for the legal minds to determine. But from a journalist point of view, I would be in a position to say that, it's a catch-22 situation, especially when we have been listening to the arguments that have been happening for the course of the morning, with the Helen Suzman Foundation has been in essence saying that it is critical to observe that, some of their human rights are being trampled on here. And they further went on to say that without proper consultation, as well as ensuring that people are able to make the means, as well as maneuver around this new normal, what they would be finding themselves in, then it means that it is really pointless. But also looking at the other side of the coin, which is, of course, the part of government, where government has been saying they've really been cracking the whip and trying to really ensure that they tighten their grip on the borders to ensure that it's only people that are here legally that are able to work in South Africa. But on the other hand as well, you also get a sense that government is really losing its grip on such matters, because as you can see right now, you have people who are coming to say, look, we're willing to play along with government, we're willing to follow due procedure. But when they get to government's doors, they are turned away. Like, for instance, this principal that I just made an example with, she said that her skills of being a school principal were deemed as an uncritical skill in South Africa. Hence, the process of reapplying for permanent citizenship in the country was declined because of that particular skill being deemed uncritical here in South Africa. So really, it would seem like government itself will have to get its house in order if they will be able to get a tighter grip on migration laws, especially when it comes to ensuring that, people who are willing to comply are accommodated right now. So it would really be interesting to see how the courts will sway when it comes to making that all-important decision, seeing that deadline is looming. I mean, June is just a month or two away.
Very interesting indeed. June is just around the corner. What has the South African Department of Home Affairs had to say about this situation, or even the Zimbabwean government, as an influx of citizens will be arriving in a few weeks?
My many engagements with the Department of Home Affairs, the story behind this whole process is that they're really trying to tighten their grip when it comes to managing South African borders, when it comes to managing the number of people that are in the country, especially the ones that are working here. But essentially, when you have people who've been in the country for more than 15, 20 years. I mean, what do you want them to do, post this? What should they be doing? Because essentially now they've essentially built lives. They work in the country. And also, just to also mention right now, in the morning, what was also quite interesting to observe was when Bodlender himself said that the chairperson of the Helen Suzman Foundation was even getting death threats because of this course action that was taken by the Helen Suzman Foundation to challenge government. So it's a different-sided coin right now to see that there are so many extreme ends to it, especially when you see that government is trying by all means to try and mitigate the situation of migration in the country, and especially when you're looking at how they're doing and going about it right now. So this is going to be something interesting to really watch, I can tell you.
Thank you so much, Mxolisi Masango, our correspondent from South Africa.